of audit for '24, since it'll start in the next couple of months. And for anyone that hasn't met Nate, this is the new Deputy Finance Director, Nate Moore. He's going to be taking on a lot of the capital improvement plan project and backing me up with accounts payable and just organizing finance, continuing to organize finance. Let's see, we're having a really good result from using positive pay in the bank account, so we haven't seen anything too crazy. Haven't seen anything this week, so that's first week in weeks that we've not seen anything. And then I had local roads committee on here because I did the PowerPoint for that, and hopefully it went well last night. I stayed for part of it. Next week we have audit team and Cassell coming to the city. Going to continue to do budget book. Nate's going to be attending the workshops the first week of April. I'll be out of town. And God willing, today will be the Paychex general ledger transfer into Cassell. It's been ready, but the girl at Paychex vanished. And every day we get an email saying she'll be back tomorrow. So hopefully that will happen. That'll, again, clean up the budget information. And that's it for finance.
You're flying through this.
Yeah. We got 3 presenters this morning.
All right.
Jenny, you want to start?
Sure. I think Tammy and Steve have.
Patrick.
Remember we were talking about that.
Oh,
And Sharon.
yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Shoot.
So hi, Jan Richards, Economic Development Director. So back in February, we submitted a letter of intent to apply to the state's Community Development Block Grant Community Enterprise Program. The Enterprise Program, in general, just like 10,000 you looking down, their job is to remove slum and blighted conditions from municipalities all over the country. Maine is fortunate in that we don't actually have a lot of slum conditions anymore. We're more of like a historic mill town type communities. So what we see more so in Maine communities is what they classify as blighted conditions. In here I listed some of those conditions that they consider blighting.
Oops.
Things like peeling paint, bowing brick. So bowing brick, if you look at like a facade of a building and you see that it's like sticking out and the bricks might just kind of fall out of the building, that's bowing brick. Rotting or missing siding, evidence of graffiti. We in Ellsworth, like in the past 5 years, hadn't really seen graffiti, but it's making its way back. We found about 2 instances where it's making its way back in downtown Ellsworth, which was a little strange.
Brought it from Baltimore.
What's that?
I brought it from Baltimore.
You brought it from Baltimore, yeah.
Great, thanks.
Broken windows,
Not the
broken
tagger.
signs, broken awnings, things like that, and holes in foundations. And so, really this grant funding is to help remediate a lot of that by giving, it targets businesses only. So residents cannot apply for funding for this. You have to show that small businesses, there's evidence there that there is blighting conditions for the business community. And so about 12 or 13 years ago, the city applied for funding for a facade improvement grant. We have heard from the downtown businesses that they would like to see a resurrection of that grant program. So I applied for the letter of intent to apply on behalf of all the businesses downtown that have requested this. Our idea is that we would use the money to put into a facade improvement grant program. We would develop a set of guidelines as well as an application to get funding. If we get the full $100,000, we would have to match 25%. So theoretically, we'd have $125,000 in a fund that we could then ask small businesses in the designated geographic area. So if you look at the map, we designated a small portion of State Street as it comes down into downtown, as well as all of Main Street, a portion of Water Street, up Pine, Franklin, Hancock Street, Spruce Street, and then for High Street, we're thinking the side of High Street that's still within the downtown zone, so that would be whatever, if you're going toward the
Just
island, the
before
right-hand
the
side, yeah. So that's, we went around in this area, Matt, myself, and code enforcement, and took photos of the blighted conditions in these areas, so we have an idea of what would be an eligible application, and so we can now, if we are awarded these funds, we could go meet with these business owners and say, hey, we were lucky enough to get this grant program, would you like to apply? Here's an application. We see rotting around your window, is that something that you would be able, now, we would be able to contribute toward the improvement, but the business owner would also have to provide some funds, because if we want the money to go far enough, so let's say we have $125,000, we could potentially give like $5,000 to $10,000 grants out so that we could spread the funds around the downtown. And that way, you know, Boeing brick, it's really expensive to repoint brick, so we would be able to contribute a small portion of that if the business owner could come up with the rest to be able to do those improvements to their facade.
The facade grant was a great program, and we had some great benefits from it. The old Bikini building where that they redid all that. The business owner spent a ton of money getting, and it looks great. Also, Pepper's Pub in that area right there, it was really blighted, and they really brought it up, and it was a great program. So, those are a couple that just come to mind.
Yeah, and
The bigger ones.
you know, we communicated with the, one of the administrators of this program, and so like, for example, if the building has its address on Main Street, that doesn't mean that they couldn't fix the facade on Store Street, let's say, because it's still a visible, to the public type, improvement. So if people have, you know, issues on the backside of their properties, things that are happening, but it's still something that if you were a visitor or someone coming to Ellsworth, you were parking your vehicle and then going to explore the downtown, you would see it. We know that there's a lot of improvements that building owners have taken on themselves. So if you've driven by Zeppa's Pizza, he's right now doing a full siding. Roddy Grant has done quite a bit of work to the Elizabeth's building with mainly vinyl. So if there are things that, if the city through this grant program can add to those types of improvements, that makes their money go a little bit further. The other thing that's been a major change in the past 10 years is that we have a lot of the businesses own their own buildings. So Darren from Provender owns the Lucchini building now. Amanda Beal from Polka Dot and Poppy owns those two buildings. Excuse me. And so they're running and operating their businesses. All the expenses of their businesses have theoretically gone up because of the way the economy is right now. So a lot of times it's an afterthought to have to improve the building. And so we want to provide some assistance to that as well.
So I think we always consider it not a handout, but a hand up in order to make their
That's
business.
That's right.
Yep.
So that's the concept or the scope, if you will, of the project. For the finance committee, if you look at the section in the table that's project budget, you'll see that we're asking for the full amount. So $100,000 is the maximum amount that you can request. So that's what we're asking for. We have, so I guess I didn't get to the second component of what you can ask for money for. So you can ask to remove, help reduce slum and blighted conditions. That can be through facade improvements, but that can also be through streetscape improvements. The city is making a way forward to start working on streetscape improvements on public property that we own. And one of the ways that we're doing that is through the village partnership planning project that's coming through. Let's see, probably in the next month, we'll have an RFP out.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So we can utilize that as matching funds, even though they've already been previously secured to applying for this grant, because it's going toward the same general theme of improving the downtown streetscape, and just overall, aesthetics of the downtown. So that $50,000 was approved by the council in November 20th, 2023. That was, for those of you, well, you were here at that time.
It's your first meeting.
Okay. But that came from the Economic Development Office, that came from the Planning Office, as well as the local roads budget. So that was a three-way match there to get to that $50,000 match. $8,000, so the next line below that, City of Ellsworth Streetscape. So, the $8,000 secured as part of Economic Development FY24 budget. I had in my last year's budget, money set aside for the parklet downtown, for doing some beautification efforts and things like that. So we added that in as match. And then the Heart of Ellsworth was awarded, I think it was $50,000 total from a federal grant that was the Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Project that they've been working on. And through the committee that I was participating on for that Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Project, one project was dedicated to improving visual aesthetics of the downtown through the Franklin Street Parklet and through a wayfinding and mapping project. So we added that as match here as well. And so even though we probably meet the matching funds with these previously allocated funds, I feel that it's important that we show that we want to put forth additional funding toward this for this fiscal year. So I'm requesting $25,000 come from the unallocated TIF funds from this fiscal year to be also put toward this project. So those $25,000, in my head, I'm envisioning to further enhance streetscape improvements in the downtown. So we are having some issues with our light poles currently. If anybody has seen the strobe light action
off now.
near Rossborough's. So we are working with an electrician to be able to go through every single light pole in the downtown and replace every single bulb and check the GFI unit on every single one of them and replace the GFI unit if it's bad. So I'm hoping that this funding can go towards some of that. I also am going to be walking every light pole with Adam to check the brackets that are on there so that we can go back to having banners hung on our light poles. Many of you know that we just completed the Discover Ellsworth website. There's some beautiful, there's a great tagline, there's beautiful graphics on there. So we want to take that and create banners out of the branding that was done for that and have it in the downtown. So that $25,000 I'm requesting would go toward that, and that is an acceptable match for this type of project for the Community Development Block Grant Community Enterprise Fund. So yeah, I think, did I miss anything? Oh, yes, so the FY24 unallocated TIF funds, the two expenses that we have allocated out of the unallocated TIF funds, I know that's like a really confusing thing to say, and I can help explain that a little bit more, but we only have allocated, let's see, $25,000 to the Union River Center for Innovation, which happened during last year's budget process. And then $15,000 toward the Village Partnership Initiative back in November. So it's a total of $40,000 that has been allocated out of the FY24 TIF funds so far. And that's not a significant amount of money to come out of that fund. We typically see about $140,000 of unallocated TIF funds. So feel comfortable saying that there is $25,000 in there.
That would be great.
Yeah. So our next step is we are having a public hearing. As part of any community development block grant, it's federal money. You have to have a public hearing as part of that. Since we were given notice that we were approved to move forward with the application process, March 11th, I didn't have enough time to notice a public hearing properly to be on the March agenda. And of course, the deadline for the grant application is April 12th, so I'm not able to make the April 15th regular council meeting. So appreciate the council.
Hence the reason for the 8th.
Yeah.
Yes, appreciate that for the special council meeting on April 9th. That gives enough time to notice properly in the newspaper twice. And by that time, I will already have the entire application written so that if the council agrees to the matching funds, that's the last piece that will be necessary and we'll submit before the deadline on April 12th. Questions?
Great work.
Awesome.
Cool,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I do have one
Yes,
question.
Steve.
This map is something that you had to designate?
Yes.
Okay. And could it be a broader scope, or can it not?
It can.
You just thought this was the most need? Is that
Yes.
fair?
In fact, this was the area that we walked, and I'm happy to show anyone the photos that we took, but the amount of need within this area is so much so that I think it could deplete the $125,000 quite easily. This is all draft, right? So we could go off of this and create our guidelines that once you apply, and you funded, the next phase is creating this set of guidelines, which I'll have to come back to council for, because essentially we're creating a grant program. I'll have this in the guidelines. If after, 4 months, 5 months, we see that we're not getting enough interest out of this area, we are allowed to go back to the community development block grant program and say, listen, we're not getting enough interest out of this area, can we expand our reach?
Yeah.
And then I'd come back to the council and say, can I amend the guidelines to include, let's just say, further down Water Street or something like that. And typically, so it's not a hard, it's not like you're locked in once you create the guidelines. There's some flexibility there. And they just want you to use the funds properly, so.
There's been some chatter about the artwork, about the entrance to City Hall.
Yes.
Does that qualify?
So I'm looking into that. The Historic Commission asked me that. So I'm leaning towards no, and only because residential uses are not allowed to apply. I'm assuming nonprofits and municipalities are also not allowed to apply. But I'm gonna look into it and just get an answer one way or another. Yeah.
This city crest has been
Oh,
an
it's,
issue
I know.
since basically when City Hall was rebuilt.
Yeah.
And we've looked for people to restore it. We've, I think even David Cole was looking at the
Composite
the
center.
composite center.
We're back there.
And what?
We're back there,
Yeah.
talking to them just to get a quote.
Yeah, it's just, it's so hard to find people to do
Oh.
these sorts of things.
It's beautiful. It's,
Yeah,
it's sad.
and
Yeah.
it's been falling.
I
a
know.
while.
I remember
We've
Steve
used-
Joyle
Yes,
taking
big pieces.
super glue and putting even the letters that are
Mhm.
below it, putting those back on. Just like, oh.
One of the guys ended up losing a foot or something one time, so we had to.
And of course, these windstorms that we have not
Sure.
helped it whatsoever.
Vitamin
But,
C.
but I will look into that, Steve, and I will, yeah.
Just not pushing forward, I just wondered that.
Yeah, no,
Because
it's-
it looked like City Hall was in your
It's a good
Yeah, I think
designated
it's a good
area.
idea, yeah.
Either way, it's a favorable thing for Ellsworth, but if
Absolutely.
City Hall could be in that scope, that would be even better.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, and if it doesn't, then we've been working a little bit with the Historic Commission to try to figure out ways of funding that might be outside of this. And there are local, like, Maine Community Foundation has some funds toward historic buildings, and there's statewide funds, and there's federal funds too, so you can look further into it.
Thanks.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Jana.
Scott?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm coming to you today, my plan is to be at the April 9th special meeting. FEMA has opened up 2 grants that opened up on March 11th, so I wasn't able to get into the last council meeting in a timely manner. And we missed out on last year for the same reason, because of the application scheduling didn't coincide with getting into the council. The 2 grants that are out there are the SAFER grant, which is a staffing grant for the hiring of firefighters, and the second one is a fire prevention and safety grant. The one is of the utmost concern is the SAFER grant. And when I come before you in April, I'm going to be asking to hit the send button on that grant application with the goal of hiring 8 firefighters. That's 2 firefighters per shift over the 4 shifts. The reason being, and again, next week I'll have a presentation also to coincide with my budget. But the reason being is that the council in the past 4 or 5 years has had a goal to continue to pursue having a full-time ambulance downstairs. Right now, we have a part-time ambulance downstairs that's just staffed with firefighters. And it's very difficult to run both an ambulance and maintain adequate staffing for the fire department, really, because by doing this, this is a 0 cost share grant for the next 3 years if we're awarded, which means the salaries and benefits would be covered by FEMA for the next 3 years with nothing out of pocket from the city of Ellsworth. And then at the end of the 3-year term, we would have to make a determination whether we were going to retain those firefighters or whether we would lay them off. My biggest thing is if we're going to continue to pursue this ambulance goal, which obviously having the ambulance downstairs pretty much tells us that's the intent, then we need to have staffing to be able to take care of that. Because their call volume just for the ambulance by itself is tremendous, and it's going to go up as soon as we come full-time without support of Northern Light. They will remain busy. And so right now, that ambulance is averaging 5 to 6 calls a day, and that's part-time. And we're averaging 1 to 2 transports a week, and that's part-time. We're not even supposed to be the primary transport for the city, and we're already way in excess of what other mutual aid departments had done last year for us backing up Northern Light. So the staffing is much needed. So I'll be coming to you in April for permission to hit the send button, but if we're awarded, I want to make sure you guys had advanced knowledge that if we were awarded in the fall, I didn't want to put you guys in a position to decide yes or no if we were going to accept that grant or not, and then have wasted the man hours applying for that grant at the same time. So,
One thing, if you could show the total cost for the next 3 years that the grant is going to cover.
Yes.
And then what the effect is gonna be after that 3 years, to have that 8 people on, like their
Mhm.
benefits, because that's gonna be a huge boost in your
Oh, yeah.
budget to accept all of
Yeah.
those people.
Right.
And we're talking probably $500,000
Correct.
a year.
Yep.
So that's a huge budget bonus.
yeah, and part of the grant application process is building out that budget, what it's going to cost and everything.
Okay,
Because the only burden to the city is if they work overtime, we have to cover that.
yeah.
But the base salaries and the benefits and all that stuff is covered by the grant.
So is it like 52, so will they cover like the 52 and 4, or like the 4 overtime that's already normally
There's no
scheduled?
52 and 4 anymore.
There isn't, see, I don't
No,
even know.
They are,
Oh, he,
last, we did a side letter a year and a half ago
Okay.
and changed their schedule to a 42-hour work week.
Okay.
So there's no FLSA overtime that's built in.
okay,
So that's out there. So any overtime that they work is outside of their regularly scheduled hours. And so that would be what the city would have to cover on that backside. But
But if you have more people, then hopefully you won't have as
Overtime
much
goes
overtime too, so.
Correct.
Well, that's the theory,
That's the-
it
Well,
typically doesn't. work.
again, and that's the biggest thing, because it'll allow us to set a proper minimum staffing level and allow people to be able to take time off without having to do
To back.
callbacks and things like
Okay.
that, and create that additional overtime.
Can we also sit down and, since you're gonna pro form those expenses, also the revenue? Because the revenue side of that, I actually know a lot about ambulance revenues, and
No,
I'd
no,
like to have that too.
I understand that, but our projections right now are difficult. I mean,
Sure.
because we only just now started to receive revenue.
Yay. Yay.
We've made $1,000 in 1 week.
That's okay, that's all right.
So, but, yeah, we can work that out. We can project out what it, based on the call volume we have now, we
Yeah.
can try and forecast what the revenue would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great.
It's a good-
difficult with not
It's a
having
good
data.
moneymaker, ambulance.
Yeah, it's difficult right now, per se, because we don't have data with generated revenue, but we can base it off the call volume that we've had in the past with an anticipation. But,
I think it might be helpful to, you know, if you're talking about getting the minimum staffing levels, you know, we've had conversations throughout the budget process about getting to that level just through city funds anyway. To make comparing, you know, the rate at which you'd do it if the city were just funding it on its own versus with the grant.
Correct.
And seeing what that would look like.
yeah,
Get your average, you know, what's your average call? What's your average transport? What's your average? All of those things. It's easy to
Yeah.
find, and
I
Northern
mean-
Light probably has it.
huh?
Northern Light probably has that
Northern Light
data.
does not share
I was gonna say, no,
they're and I think, well, I don't think you were here for the last Northern Light contract. They
Is it a
are
nonprofit?
supposed to provide the information, however, they do not. So, any revenue forecasting is gonna have to be done internally, based on what we know on our fee structure and things
Yeah.
like that, which I think.
I think you can do it too. I went up against AMR and they weren't sharing it either, so,
It's the same concept.
yeah.
But yeah, that's how I'm looking at this, is I'm trying to put us in a position that when it's time for us to take over, that we're not scrambling in an emergency situation trying to hire people, which could take a long time. If we're proactive and we start this process now and have them there and give us an addition, that 3 years to be able to look at, being able to take that over, that gives us that time. And I think from my perspective, it's an achievable process, but with the zero cost share, I think that's what helps the city out to be able to try and do this.
I think you also need to have an explanation where you're gonna put all those people to. Or do you already have that?
I do.
Oh, you do, okay,
I do.
great.
Yeah. So we'll work, there's some things we gotta work out, some downstairs stuff, but
Right. Is there gonna be costs associated with that as well?
there will be, we'll have to do some renovations to the, if you're familiar, the weight room used to be downstairs in the living area.
Yep.
That area was converted over to common space for Northern Light when they were here. We would have to retrofit that whole area to be additional dormitory space, separate living dormitory space, which the bones of the building will support it. It's just a matter of being able to put up the partition walls and possibly have to redo some of the sprinkler system in there, but there would be just some internal stuff we would have to do to accommodate additional personnel.
Does that safer grant cover any of those costs associated with that? No. Okay.
No.
But some of that's work Jim could do in-house as well, so it'd be more material costs.
Oh, right.
Right.
Yeah, and on the grand scheme of things, based on the timeline and when the grants are awarded, we can attempt to try and budget into another budget or something like that, to be able to have the funds to be able to add that space or renovate that space. So, and it might coincide with the work that Jim is projecting to try and remediate some problems down there anyways.
Okay.
What, is there schedule changes that could provide, and I'm throwing this out there because it's been in the back of my mind for a long time. Is there some sort of schedule change that would require people to have less bunk space?
No. Anything outside of the schedule they were on before, they're here for 24 hours. If you were to change that schedule, we would lose quite a bit of personnel, because nobody's really, with career fire departments, they're not gonna come in here and work for 10 or 14 hours. That's not gonna happen. We would still conceivably always have to have living quarters to support X number of firefighters. We wouldn't be able to, if they work a 10 or a 14, there would still be an overnight contingent that would have to be here, and it would still require living quarters with bunk space.
And you're saying that if you change that the personnel would be a real problem?
It would be a huge problem. We almost lost half our workforce on before the last schedule change happened, which would have been detrimental to the city.
And that was a 48-hour?
That was a 48-hour schedule change, and we had about half the workforce ready for resignation with papers in hand. So we were able to achieve that schedule change, and we got lucky. We only lost one person out of all of them, and they've actually requested to come back. But I don't want to put the city in that position.
Well, I'm not suggesting, I'm thinking more of a collaborative effort
Mhm.
from everybody that is part of the fire department. Is there another schedule that would, maybe we have to pay more, but would allow us better use of the space? Because let's face it, you need a new fire station.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not reality downstairs.
With the projection for the number of personnel for this station, without building an additional substation elsewhere in the city, and we've had this discussion before at other times, City Hall Fire Station is ideal for the urban area of the city of Ellsworth. Aside from moving the fire station to another area within the city, urban area of the city, it makes absolutely no sense to move it outside of City Hall, because it is, aside from the access of the parking lot, we can hit the majority of everything here in the urban area where 75% of the calls are, and we can be on them within 4 to 5 minutes. To try and move them out from here would just increase our response times, which from a medical call could be detrimental. And then you start adding the fire calls on top of that, and there's some compounded effects from that, which obviously part of the planning process for the future is we're gonna have to start looking at potentially other station out in the North Ellsworth area to help reduce some of those travel times. Because again, if you live, I live in North Ellsworth, but I understand if you live out there, you've accepted you've almost accepted the fact that the fire department is almost 8 miles away. It is from my house, and I live in the city. So that's a long way for a fire department to be, especially for a municipality that's a city, not a small town. So in the future, that's a long-term planning process, but as far as City Hall, I don't foresee, unless we get kicked out of here, I don't foresee us moving out of City Hall for a very, very long time. We may reduce the staffing in here as we move to substations, but I don't foresee the fire department at City Hall moving.
Who sets response times for you? Who regulates that around here? Is it the sheriff?
Yeah, that's a national consensus standard,
Okay.
so.
Who
and
enforces
and
it?
Pardon me?
How is it enforced?
It's not overly enforced. It
Okay.
basically, it's a national consensus standard.
Okay.
And, you know, the short of it is that we should have an effective firefighting crew on scene within 5 minutes of the receipt of an alarm. So if you have a fire at your house, we're supposed to have the first fire truck pulling in your driveway in 5 minutes. From City Hall, I can be anywhere in 5 minutes within the urban area. I can't get past Mariahville in 5 minutes, Mariahville Road in 5 minutes. It's not achievable. And then you add summertime traffic on top of that. So this is why my future planning encompasses adding a fire station out in the North Ellsworth area. Because Route 1A, I can travel from the Colwyn Road to Mariahville Road, which is roughly 5 miles, and I can do that in 5 minutes. So there's some long-term planning that's in process that I'm taking a look at. But as far as the response time, that's a consensus standard across the country. We are held to it to a standpoint through ISO, but ISO is subjective to the insurance companies that follow ISO. There are some insurance companies that don't believe in the fire protection class, but a lot of them do, and they give you credits towards your insurance if we keep our insurance rating down, which this year we were reevaluated. The city has always been, since I've been here, a 3, and the rural area has been an 8. Well, they call it a 3Y, but it's been an 8 because we don't have water supply out there. We were reevaluated this fall, and it was just published 2 weeks ago, and we stayed at 3. So that's a plus for us. We haven't gone backwards, but a little bit more work, and we could push it up to a 2, which will help reduce some insurance rates across the city. Putting a fire station out and some water supply out into North Ellsworth. Those people that live out there, their insurance ratings would go down tremendously because right now they're considered unprotected area. So as we plan for the future, we can help drop their insurance ratings too, which is definitely a cost saving on their part. Second grant is fire prevention and safety, and that's just a smaller grant that allows for us to buy added equipment for fire investigation. The city by state law is required to do fire investigation for all fires. The fire marshal's office is there for assistance unless it meets certain criteria, but it is the fire chief's responsibility to investigate all fires in the city. So with that, I am a certified fire investigator, and so I would like to use some of this grant to apply for additional supplies to help us be able to properly investigate fires in the city. And the second part is the fire prevention component to that. It will allow us to build up our fire prevention side of things with the stuff that we do in the school, the stuff that we do with the senior living housing, and added things like that so that we can do a better job getting out into the city, be more visible, increase the fire prevention in the city, and move from there. That is a 5% cost. That for the city would be a 5% cost share, but we're not talking millions of dollars out of in a grant application. We're only talking by the time I would be done applying, probably around $100,000. So it would be 5% of that. So that's you all right?
Good, thanks.
Where's the ambulance?
Well, my hopes are is they're headed out to the public works because our grant-funded trailer should be arriving today.
Okay.
So
That was fast.
it's been sitting and waiting for 3 months.
It wasn't bad.
No, our grant-funded trailer just arrived for recruitment and retention, so those are what those 2 grants are what I'll be bringing to you on the 9th to get the blessing to hit the send button. I'll spend the next 2 weeks trying to fill out those applications and get those squared away and ready to go. But April, I'll be coming to you with the permission to hit send. April 12th is my deadline.
Everything's April 12th.
I was gonna say, it's the same issue as the CDBG, it's in between both regular council meetings. Did you want to just touch on, speaking of the retention recruitment piece, the adjustment we made to that grant, the position for the volunteer recruitment?
I think Tammy, were you here when we received the SAFER grant for recruitment and retention of volunteers?
Yeah.
Okay. So part of that process was for the hiring of a volunteer recruitment coordinator / grant management. We've been unsuccessful because when we applied for it, FEMA cut our funding for the salaries part of it, and we had to change it to a part-time position.
Yep.
So for the past year, we have not been able to do so. So I approached Matt. Again, FEMA money, if we don't spend it, we have to turn it back in, and it reduces our odds of being successful on the next grant application. So I approached Matt and asked him if I could turn this into a full-time position again and take the monies from the salary that I didn't use this year and the benefits package that I didn't use this year and apply it towards increasing the salary rate for the next 3 years. It won't put us over anything. It won't, again, the money's still there. We had $200,000 allocated towards salary for 4 years, and we had $100,000 allocated toward benefits for 4 years. So I'm just gonna take year one, divide it over the next 3 years, and offset the full-time benefits package from the city and increase the salary rating to make it a little bit more attractive without asking for salary or funds from the city. So I'd still be using the grant money, but changing the position from part-time back to full-time, which is what I applied for in the first place.
So it's a 3-year full-time instead of a 4-year part-time position now.
Makes sense to me.
Does the council need to adjust anything on that though, from the motion? I
No,
mean-
because you all approved the grant.
Grant,
I-
just a grant, okay.
Yeah, you
Alright.
guys, you all approved the grant, back when we brought it forward. I think, you know, between myself and Matt, we just wanted to make sure that you all were aware that we made that change. Although it's still fully funded through the grant, we made that change from a part-time to a full-time, which was what the intent of the grant was in the first place.
Do you think you'll get somebody for full-time? Do you already have somebody?
No, I
Oh.
don't. Fingers crossed. The applications that have come in have been underqualified.
Oh.
Underqualified. So, there's 6 other departments besides the city of Ellsworth that are part of this, and so, it's imperative that they meet some of these qualifications because they will be out in these other 6 departments.
Right.
Again, it's hard to sell something you've never sold before, and if you don't have experience in it, it's very hard to sell it to somebody who's never done it before. I want to bring somebody in who's got a good set of experience and is be able to walk up to somebody on the side of the street who's never done anything with the fire department and be sold on coming to volunteer for us. And it's hard to do that if they come in unqualified.
Right.
So that's what I've got for you guys.
All right, thanks, you're just all kinds of stuff.
Busy guy.
Thanks,
Thank
Scott.
you.
Yes. Be nice when I get a deputy.
Robert,
Delegate.
welcome to your first finance committee meeting.
Well, thank you.
Can just pass them down.
Sorry, I did take executive, right?
Yeah.
There's one up there.
Never really thought about what
One from PD originally, but yeah, now it's just right next to Scott's
Oh,
office.
yeah.
Everybody got one of these?
Yeah. I mean, I'll
There's
take
an
an
extra,
extra.
sorry. I feel like mine kind of dovetails the blight and fire. It has a little bit of both involved. It's in regards to 7 Fairgrounds Road. It's a house that burned down, or didn't burn down, it caught fire a few years ago, I guess, before my time here, but Lori's been working on getting this resolved for a while, and there's some pictures attached.
Fairgrounds Road.
If you go up Main Street, just on the right-hand side as you're heading up Main Street towards Hancock. It's a road just past like Fields Ave.
It's the
that
next
area.
road past Beals Avenue.
Oh, okay.
Yep. You can see that there are photos attached that we took, Lori and I took together a month ago or so. And, yeah, that's been there for a couple of years like that. And,
Ick.
yeah, and the trash has been an issue for the entire time Lori's been here. She said, basically, she's been dealing with these people to get that picked up. And there has been, you know, excuses made, and they took him to court once, and nothing was really done.
Is it occupied?
No,
No,
it's,
it's
it,
not
no,
livable.
it's not livable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I'll
mean,
just say for the history piece of it, you know, so when the fire originally had occurred, there was an insurance payout for the fire and to
Yes.
fix the building. And it's just the landowners did not seem to use that money for the repair of
what
the
happened was
property.
they were behind on their mortgage,
Mhm.
and the bank took that insurance money and put it towards the mortgage instead of either repairing or demolishing the house.
Were there liens on that property from the city?
They're current on their taxes, but
Okay.
the bank's paying their taxes as far as we can tell.
Okay.
So, basically what we're asking the council to do is to clear the building a dangerous building, so we can take care of the problem if and when we decide to.
I've done this before for my work, so I'm familiar with the process.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm,
Basically, we would have a hearing.
Yeah.
And there would be evidence presented on whether or not the building's dangerous. And if we determine it's dangerous, they have the right to appeal, but as soon as that appeal period runs, the city can take steps to both secure the building if necessary, and then eventually do any kind of remediation, whether it's fix the building or tear it down. And then it's at the cost of the property owner. And if they don't compensate the city, a lien can be filed. And then that lien eventually could, and if that, eventually be foreclosed upon. I think that's more or less the nuts and bolts. There's a lot of notice requirements, real estate, so there's due process considerations, but it's a pretty robust process that it would go through, and then ultimately, if it comes to that, the city would kind of have the opportunity to do what it needs to do. I think that more or less sums it up.
Just a side note to that, I've been here about 4 months, and about, I'd say every week, at least once, somebody from Fairground Road calls or stops in and asks what's going on with this property. The neighbors aren't happy, and they've been complaining about rats and vermin, and
Oh, yeah.
they say it's coming out of this property, and
Yeah.
it's a good chance it is.
Well, and
So
there's
it's-
risks of kids getting in it.
Yeah, and it's all those sorts of other
Yeah,
problems.
so it's,
Similar to 16
Yeah, that's what I was
Central
gonna say.
Ave. We did
Yeah,
have
yeah.
people
We
go into
were
that
just resolving
building,
that
but
one
it's
now.
the city's
Mhm.
property, so we could board it up and properly secure it, but we can't do anything with this property.
yeah, until we go through this process.
Right.
Mhm.
So, mine was pretty short and sweet, but I just want to put that on your radar.
I saw
Okay.
the big memo packet, I was like, oh, man.
Oh, I know, it's like.
Well, no, it's
oh.
just, it's a lot of correspondence and photos, and then there's also, I don't have it attached to mine, but at the end, there's also the correspondence with, the Kozlowskis' lawyer from Pine Tree Legal, where we've gone through trying to get a hold of them, and we don't know exactly where they're staying, but they're still around apparently somewhere.
The Kazakhstas.
Yes, the family. So that's all there, the Lori's correspondence with the lawyer is attached to the back there too.
Great.
That's all I've got.
I just have a couple of questions about that. The insurance went to the mortgage.
Yes.
Has there been any chatter with the people about selling property? Would they consider just selling?
I think in the correspondence with the lawyer, because we can't find them to talk to directly, we've been corresponding with their lawyer. They would like to fix the house up and move back in, but I don't know without the insurance money that that's gonna be a feasible proposition for them. Or now that it's been several years open to the weather, that would be really feasible either. But that was their desire, was to move back in. So,
And when did this burn? I know it's in.
I can't remember the date off the top of my head, but it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Years?
Yeah, it's been a
Years,
couple of years.
Multiple years.
Wow, that's okay. I just,
Yeah, no, it's,
you got neighbors that are in an unfortunate situation.
Yes.
You've got a family that lost their home. It's-
no, it's not an easy situation all the way around.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I guess while you're here, you just provide an update on 16 Central Ave, that the process for that is
Oh,
moving
yeah.
forward.
We are in the process of having 16 Central Street torn down. What we're gonna do is have Adam and the Highway Department go over and they're gonna, we're gonna buy rent them a excavator for a month. And they're gonna, as part of that, they're gonna go over and tear down the building for us and take the demo waste to DM&J
Nice.
and get that finally taken care of. It's
Doesn't the city usually rent an excavator anyway for 6 months?
yeah, that was, Adam graciously agreed to, let us, or, if we rented it for him, he'd do it for us.
That's why
So-
he said thanks to Lori, he
Yes.
got his excavator a month early.
Yeah, so that,
Oh, a
that
month
was the deal.
early.
Yeah.
He,
Okay.
he would find time in the schedule coming right up, once the
That's funny.
excavator's rented, he'd go over and do that for us first thing.
So I'm unclear. Are we renting it for a longer period of time?
Yes,
or-
we're gonna rent it for longer than that, so he can do other projects with it too.
Okay.
But it's not
Well,
not just for
well,
16
Let me hit the question.
Okay.
In the past, since I've sat on the council, the city has rented an excavator for approximately 6 months every summer. Okay? Is that different because of this, or is that the same because of this?
We're renting it for a month earlier now, so this process can be completed outside of what Adam had already scheduled for work with the
Okay,
excavator.
so maybe it's 7 months instead of 6, but it's the same machine,
it's
it
a s-
requires the same size machine?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, you could do it with the same size machine.
Okay, all right, thank you.
It's gonna save us a little money because we have to put out the bid.
Yeah, yeah, I understand fully.
And then, yeah, the waste, I think, though, was the biggest cost really, because we're not renting roll-offs. Adam's just gonna put them in the dump trucks, city dump trucks, and take it to
Yeah,
DMJ.
take it truck by truck to DM.
Well, that ought to be fun getting that out.
Yeah, no.
Adam agreed to it, so.
He said he'd do it, we're gonna hold him to it.
Wow.
So, it's gonna be a few loads, but we'll do it.
Let the record show, are we done with that
Yeah, thank you, Robert.
subject?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let the record show that I am not signing this warrant because there is $2,250 on this warrant going to the sanctuary that everyone is wound up about.
Did you pull that invoice, cause I can't
No.
find it?
I'm not signing that. You're gonna have to find someone else to sign that warrant if that's on there. The whole town is wound up about it, and we heard from the community, and here we are giving them another $2,250 this week.
So, I
I'm
think.
not signing it, find someone else to.
Yeah, so I do believe that's for already due rent, but the city has made the decision to no longer send
Right, I
payments
think
to
that was already
facility.
committed.
That was just
Yeah.
committed payments already, so
Not doing it.
just wanted to make that
Have
note.
someone else sign it.
Okay, we'll
I
do it, we'll do
refuse.
it.
to
I
sign
signed it.
Alright, I
We
signed
only
it
needed
too,
two,
so,
Steve.
yep,
I'm sorry?
I signed it, we only need two signatures.
Good.
cause I don't wanna hold up all the rest of the
No,
stuff,
I,
so.
I get it, but I can't do that. I'm sorry, I just.
So, what was the decision made regarding sanctuary?
So Tina, our general assistance director, spoke to the state and went through some of the complaints that have been made and the situation that's going on there. And the state has agreed or understands that, with the city, that it's probably not the best place to send general assistance housing anymore. And so we're just not sending, general assistance housing to that facility anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there an alternative to that?
Not like a for sure one, but Tina is just, will do what she normally does and just tries to find available housing where she can, as she would normally.
And is my understanding that the licensing of that facility is up for discussion at next month's meeting?
Yes, it will be, yeah.
Okay, and what's the nature of that?
So because the new owners opened a new business essentially, so the history of the building, or at least part of the history was it was a senior assisted living facility. And then when that closed, it was an unlicensed Airbnb essentially. No one knew what was going on in that
Mhm.
building.
As a general.
And then the new owners have bought it. I mean, I think that shut down for a little bit, and then the new owners bought it, and they opened up a new facility. So this is their new business license.
Just without a license?
Yes.
But, and the licensing process isn't very rigorous, right? You just,
It depends.
Okay.
So a lot of departments do have to sign off on a license to provide it, including police. And so because this process, you know, city will tell you that they were informed they needed a business license. The manager will say that he was never informed he needed a business license, but regardless of that, police would have to sign off on it. Now that they've been open for a while, police have received calls to that facility, which is maybe a factor. Police may not sign off on this particular license. I don't think it's gotten to that step yet. But it's not super easy. Like a number of departments have to sign off if, in a different situation, if a property owner owed taxes on their building.
Mhm.
The tax office may not sign off on a license due to overdue taxes and that sort of thing,
okay.
so.
And then does city council need to sign off on the
Yes.
license ultimately?
Yes,
Okay.
for lodging, which is
For
what this
lodging,
facility is, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you for explaining that.
Ray, do you have anything this morning?
No, I was just interested in the fire chief's reference to, your reference to certain federal regulations regarding, employment regulations regarding fires.
Mhm.
So, and I can recall 40 years ago, when that similar issues reared their head after there was some federal court decision regarding overtime and all the things, and in particular affecting both fire and police. And so I see 40 years later, the same stuff is still there in something.
Right.
The more things change, the more they say the same,
Right.
as they say.
Does anyone have anything else?
No? Thank
We're
you.
good.
Have a good weekend.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Nate, how'd you like your first finance
Look at me, I
committee meeting?
survived.